Hey everyone, this is Ryan Robitaille, and I just wanted to do a quick run through of this latest prototype alpha I'm working on called CanvasQL. CanvasQL is essentially a spatial, dashboarding application meant for SQL exploration, SQL queries, etc. Kind of like you would see like a superset or a metabase or something like that, or even Tableau to a slim extent. It's kind of a different take on the dashboarding paradigm. So the idea is, instead of having multiple UIs that say, "Hey, create this query," and I want to create this dashboard, I want to create this workbook or visualization, and then put them together in a dashboard, and here's a filter. Why not do all those things at the same time in like a spatial, very free flowing way? You'll see what I mean in a second here. So here's the canvas. As you can see, it's snaps to a fixed grid. This is a block. This block has a view in it. We'll get back to that in a second. Let's go to something that people really care about, is data. I said this is a SQL tool, and it certainly is. So these are the databases I've set up with it. There's a Vertica one. There's Postgres. There's some SQLite databases. I'm going to go to my tried and true Bigfoot data that I use for a lot of these presentations. I have a table Bigfoot sightings here. You can see here's selecting from all the connections we have, right, set up for the system. These are all the tables. It's been scanned for the metadata previously. These are the fields. And as I'm browsing through, I can just start pulling stuff out. So let's see. I want to see the table. Let's put that here. Let's get rid of you for now. So there's basically my select all from the Bigfoot table. Just a grid, nothing too exciting. I can use the keyboards to shift the block around and to resize it. And I thought I closed you. All right. Something interesting here that you can see up here, it has the name, the data type, and a number. So that is the distinct values for each of these fields. And we're only getting 200 rows per page here, but in the background, it went and grabbed like post-run metadata, because I find that kind of stuff really useful. I know this is a year, like how many years do we have here? How many, what's the cardinality of this field? I find really helpful when I'm, trying to look at stuff. So if we go back to our browser, we can see I could also grab a field by itself, right? So let's make this smaller again, so I have some more desktop space here. And I could say, let's say I just wanted the class of the sighting. I could drag that out, and it'll just give me a group by from the source table, class count. And this is with anything, right? I want to look at the county. It'll do a group by that as well. As you can see here, as you can see in the bottom, this is the Honey SQL version. If any Clojure people out there understand that, and this is how it materializes into the SQL that gets sent to the database. But as you notice, as I drag things out of here, these panels react. So if I say, hey, let's bring class out again, I can see these three blocks, realize that this field is coming from the same source that they're hitting, which means it knows that I can add, like, this is a compatible field with their queries. So I could say, hey, let's add the class to group by, and now I have county and class. Or if I add, county here, I could say group by, or whatever. So now, these three tables are essentially sister tables from the main source table, which is this Bigfoot sightings table in the database. Now, it gets more interesting when I do things like, all right, so let's get rid of these guys, and let's go back to this first select all. Instead of pulling from down here, what if I went up here and said, hey, give me state, right? So state, let me drag it out of here instead. So now I have the same state group by roll up as we had before, but now it's from this select all. So you see we have highlighted state and we have highlighted parent as this query. So if you look down here, this block is actually, its parent is this other query. So we're generating subqueries as we nest things down, right? And that goes all the way down. I can grab row count, drag that out. It's an integer, so it's not going to be grouped by, it's going to be summed. And here it says, hey, I have one sum value. Let's just display it in a, in a pretty kind of pretty kind of way. And if you see the coloring, we have this is the selected block. This is my query. It is some row count from this block. And this block is querying this block. So we have parent and then upstream, right? Because that's really important, like the lineage of how this kind of stuff works. And I'll show you why that's important right now. So let's go back to the base. I'm going to go back to the base database. So this is not pulling from this. This is pulling from the main table. I'm going to go and say season. Let's move my editor over here. I'm going to drag season over here. And I pulled it from the main database. So you see nothing else highlights. So this is not connected to anything. This is a completely query on its own. So let's do this. So all these grids are parameters by default. If I click on the row, you can see on the right-hand side, it's creating each of these fields as its own parameter, like a global parameter for the dashboard, right? So I can go over here and I can see, oh, we have these two fields. I have the row count. I really don't want that as a parameter. That's not helpful. But I have this parameter called season that equals fall. And since these come from the same table, I could say, okay, let's drag out this parameter. As you can see, the box is lit up with, do you want to highlight this? Do you want to create a filter with this? And since I know this table in the upper left is the source table of the other two blocks, I'm going to say, let's drag this season fall into the where equals box. Okay, so as you can see, now we have a parameter that filters this table, that filters this query rather, and these two blocks are controlled by that query. So as I filter, as I change this parameter, they all change downstream, which is really nice to me not have to, do a bunch of like hooking up. I can just say, hey, let's create a main view, and then all our other views are sub views of that, and we can kind of understand how things are controlled, right? Going back to here, this A26, we can see type around. And I can do other stuff with this parameter too. I can even say, hey, well, I had this running. I'm going to drag this parameter out as its own block. And there you go. It's a text value that says spring. Well, why not use it? Fall, summer, unknown, winter. Cool. So to give you kind of an idea of like how you can use this for exploring a data set and seeing things. And maybe you're not generating dashboards. Maybe you're just generating screens so you can understand a table more, or looking at daily updates, or just trying to, dig into what's going on. Let's see. Yeah. And again, any of these are all going to be downstream. Cool. So what else can we do here? Well, let us grab something. Let me grab something with a little bit lower cardinality than, let's say, state. We'll do class. Okay. Doing a group by class, and I've said before on the videos, like class is like a, this is Bigfoot data, so they have a whole like taxonomy, I guess. I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger. Apparently, class C is really, it's either really good or really bad. I don't know. I guess if you want to be face to face with a Bigfoot or not, whether they exist or not, it's either. Anyways. So again, we have the same thing here. We're grouping by it, and I'm filtering it by clicking on this other row set. Well, what I can do here is, again, in the spirit of exploring my data, building stuff quickly, keeping that feedback loop up, I create a new block. By default, it's just a viewer block. It's just a viewer block. It says hi. There's some cool stuff you can do here, like I can manipulate some of the values scrubbing wise, but it's just a block, with hiccup and recom. Any of you Clojure people will know. But it's also a target for things. So what if I go over to my class query here and I say, let me drag class. Well, look, there's an X and a Y. Maybe class is X and maybe row count is Y. Well, if I click on the tab of the view I just created, well, now we have a bar chart. Cool. Well, maybe row count, that should be color too. Cool. So now we've just made a bar chart. And as you can see, I have the bar chart selected. You can see that says parent. So it knows that I'm using this query for this bar chart. And obviously everything flows downstream. It works just like you would expect. And much like the high text we had, this is a Vega Lite through Oz. Lots of configuration here. And again, this is a work in progress, so this will look a lot better shortly. But anything that the UI understands is scrubbable. So obviously, font size, margins. We even have the type, right? So right now the default type is rectangle. If I change that to bar, circle, line, some of this doesn't make sense, obviously, but you can scrub around and see what you want. Change the way it's aggregated, change the order, all the color schemes, maybe like I want to switch to this magma, and then go back to, code view, so to speak. So you can see how we can start to kind of like build up like this, little corpus here of blocks and visualizations that very quickly becomes what you'd consider kind of like a dashboard, right? Whether it's for presentation or whether for you just exploring the data on your own. To make it even more interesting, we can do conditional formatting. So, anyone who's done dashboards for a long time knows that, one of the most useful things for many people tends to be a grid. And, some of the purists will be like, oh, if it's visualized right, they don't need the grid. But like people like to use grids. So the grid needs to be pretty damn powerful. So one of the things I really wanted is to be able to say, hey, like, okay, so you have class A, B over here. Maybe I want class B's to be called out on the grid, right? We don't want to filter necessarily, but give me a highlight. So if I select this row, and as you can see down here, because I selected a row, I now created parameters for all of those things. So you could go 2, 3 different levels deep where I filter this, filters that, filters this, filters something else. We won't do that now, but just as you can see, creating parameters is super important. So let's say we grab class B. I'm going to drag this value and say highlight where it equals class B. And now anything that's class B will have this row highlight. I could have also grabbed this class B out to the canvas, and it would literally do another query where class is class B for some reason. It's not running. See, this is what you get to do a video on alpha. Anyways, let's go back to this. So I've highlighted anything that equals class B. If I look at the code for this block, I can see there is this style rules, right? All fields, logic, when class equals class B, do this. And since this is part of our scrubber, I could also say, hey, maybe that red, this color, whatever. I'm sure you kind of get the idea, but it gives us a way to highlight stuff on the grid that, you want to call out, to your users, right? I can make another highlight, get the different color, etc. Something I think is kind of cool also is maybe if I want to do, let's see here. It's kind of a goofy example, but let's do year. So I do year, I can say heat map on year, and then it'll use that value as the heat map and generate like a temperature, which is kind of cool. Again, conditional formatting. Grids are super important. Lots of uses there. Anyways, so cool. We've got all this stuff going on, very nice. What else is there? Well, while I've been doing all these queries and clicking on all these blocks and running all these subqueries, in the background, the system's been looking at all these blocks and trying to recommend visualizations. So you can see here for this block, it's created 105 recommendations. This one 8. This one 8, these 1, of things that I can, visualize without having to do it manually like I did with this bar graph. So let's see here. We have basic horizontal bar color, time series color. And I can and some of these might not make sense, right? Because they're programmatically generated. I can just start clicking through these different suggestions and kind of see, what is interesting to me. Here's state, color by class, season by month, and this is not going to be, the what you want, but it's interesting for, getting something started and then editing it, right? Compound. I have these compound ones that can be generated, which is multiple visualizations in the same view. Let us see here. So let's go. That's very similar to what we already created. Well, so let's just say hypothetically this is what we want, right? Then just like everything else in the UI, I would just drag this row out to the canvas and plop it somewhere. And since it's built upon this query, it's downstream of my filter. Oh, even the preview changes. And I can start building things kind of like that. Now, another neat thing about the recommendations here is that they're not hard-coded. They're all part of the user space configuration. So if I go over here, I have this file called visshapes. Now, this is basically the definition of not only the visualizations, but what kind of query we need to supply them and what constraints we want on the fields that will be acceptable for this, right? So we can see I have two axes here for this particular, for the basic horizontal bar. It needs to be a dimension, low cardinality, very low cardinality, medium cardinality, string, year, month. Don't want it to be not is date, not is date time. And you can see the language here, the DSL is Honey SQL. So anything where there's logic in this system, whether it's this, whether it's the conditional highlighting, all Honey SQL based logic. I kind of like approach this as, even as this, everything is just one DSL, right? It's Honey SQL, it's Hiccup, it's Recom, and Vega, Oz Vega altogether. So we see we have, these particular things, these attributes essentially of a query or field, and then it matches this, and then it subs in all the values, and then this becomes like basic HBAR, right? Basic HBAR, these are all the combinations that matched here that it's presenting, well, what is an aggregate? What is a dimension with low enough cardinality to show it here? Even though the cardinalities are kind of all over the place, and you might think, well, that's cool. Like, what is this? Well, there's another field, there's another file that defines what these attributes are. So as the tables get sniffed in the metadata, it basically goes and creates these kind of like Boolean attributes that are user generated. Look for what's a latitude and longitude, what's a low cardinality, what's a medium cardinality. And these are all, you can change this to whatever you want and make the viz definitions whatever you want. Again, I have a bunch of stuff here. I have maps. I have all kinds of stuff, and there's no reason. Let me bring out another table real quick. We'll bring out the Boston PD data real quick, and we'll let that. So so anything you can think of, not only just Vega Lite, but this could be anything in this kind of paradigm. So it can be Hiccup, it could be Recom, it could be a great big box that says hello. Like, it's arbitrary, but based on, data underpinnings, like query underpinnings, like subqueries and subqueries and subqueries. So let's go over here and see if this is still running. Yeah, it takes a little while for these fields with for these tables and queries with lots of fields, because it tries to do it in real time in the back end. So just give it a second here, and this guy should be done. Let's make this a little bit wider. Oh yeah, we can also drag things out of the preview here too. Same deal. Let's see here. Nothing yet. Going back to the metadata sniffing, it's the lowest level too. You know, basically max, min, distinct count. Then it does attributes. Then it does shapes. I also have this system for derived fields that is not enabled right now because it gets tricky, right? Because it's using functions that not all databases have. But you know, like by year, if there's something that looks like a date time, like can we run year on it? Can I run month on it, and then create basically an automated calculated field? So that's still a work in progress though. So, anyways, let's go back here and see. All right, cool. So this main offenses table here has been sniffed, and it generated 407 possible visualizations. To show you some of those things, let's see, like the compound trend, day of week, right? And this is possibly not what you want, but you can create all these starters in here that give you a really interesting starting point to get down to whatever you're trying to create. You know, this is obviously a Vega chart with some callouts and a dynamic arrow here. And we can see, you know, I'll do other videos on this, but when we get closer to release, but you can see, you know, each of it has a conditional, you know, kind of like a Boolean parameter here that says, hey, is this greater than that? This viz also comes with 2 queries. This is just for the calculation, and this is for the actual visualization. Again, this probably makes no sense, but you know, I tried to build a system that's very expandable, right, in like user space stuff. So let's go back to the recommendations. There's a latitude and longitude in this query, so we should have, yeah, so a point map should be possible. Cool. Awesome. And by default, it's only doing like 200 rows, you know, to make sure we don't preview, clog everything up. But I can go in here and take that off. Yeah, the map in Vega gets a little bit. Yeah, so we can say, just give me everything. I try to protect the UI from being overloaded with thousands and thousands of points, but yeah, so now we have the Boston crime map. Not drawn by any color or anything, but there is versions of that. You know, if I go to point map colors, this one tries to do it by district. Yeah, having 50,000 points or whatever it is there, not good for performance, but I think you see what I'm getting at. Anyways, I'll end that there. Done a lot of rambling. I'm going to do more on this. I hope to have this released in a couple weeks and then get back to doing rabbit stuff. But really kind of an interesting way of building stuff that is kind of very, what I consider very low UI and very much like exactly to the point. Right? Like, here's my table. Here's my thing. Let me drag this out. I'm slicing and dicing as I think of things and then using those things to assemble back together to create what it is, you know, that I want. Yeah. And anything interesting here? I don't remember. These are previous screens that I did. And obviously, just like anything else in the interface, if I want to load one of these, I would just, where's the V-select? I would just select it and then just drop it onto the canvas, and then it would load. But we're struggling with the 300,000 points, whatever that is. Yeah, so this is another little. This is a custom UI filter. Anyways, I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Well, I'll talk to you all later, and you know, leave a comment, or whatever, and there'll be a more scripted video on this in the future. But I just wanted to show something, you know, of what's going on, because not all you know see all my Twitter bullshit where I post videos of this. So yeah, I'll talk to you all soon.